Thank you all for making the webinar early in the morning, according to US Eastern Time. It's around 4 p.m. here in Turkey. So I appreciate your attending this webinar early in the morning. Let me introduce myself. My name is Hilal Peker. I'm an assistant professor of TESOL at Bilkent University. I got my PhD in TESOL at the University of Central Florida. I've been working as an assistant professor for about like 4.5 years now. And let's get started. Okay, so today I'll be talking about traditional bullying, cyberbullying, and the bullying victimization impact on English language learners' identity. So the title of my presentation is, does traditional bullying or cyberbullying have a bigger impact on ethnic minority students' identities? Okay. So before starting my presentation, I want to show a scene from my Brown Eyes movie. There's a bullying scene, which is called as traditional bullying. So let's watch that for about like 2 minutes.
Hey, we need one more to play ball. Want to play? Definitely something. You want to play? I think he's the one that can't speak. He's from China or something. No way. You mean he doesn't know what I'm saying? Hey kid, are you ugly? Yeah. Is your name Wang Cheng? Hey, what's in the bag?
Now, you young men just stay there until your parents come.
I really need to speak to you about one of my students in my class. His name is June, and I'm not sure.
I almost forgot. I hope he's not still waiting in my office. It's been such a crazy day.
What I'm trying to tell you is that he doesn't speak any English, and I don't know what I should do with him. I mean, about him.
Let's go get cleaned up.
Okay, so in this scene, it was basically traditional bullying scene, and what the native speakers did to the international or immigrant child was harassing him because of his not being able to speak English or his ethnicity, his look maybe. So those types of things are called traditional bullying, which is done face-to-face or physically. So just to start with the brief literature review, there are three big components of bullying, and they are bullying is supposed to be intentional, repeated, and there's an imbalance of power. So it's basically based on imbalance of power or power relations among individuals. And the seriousness of bullying victimization can be extended from isolation, loss of friendships, to suicides. And in this case, it's pretty serious. And most of the exposed populations in the US are immigrants and refugees. And, you know, kids come with their families, and they start schooling in the US without not knowing any English. They are supposed to take math or biology or history, and it's pretty hard for them to learn languages while learning subject area or some content in another language. So those populations are mostly exposed to bullying. And there are two types of bullying victimization. The first one is traditional bullying, and it's done physically or face-to-face, the one that you've seen in the video. And the second version is cyberbullying, which is done online, like on a Facebook post or at a like conversation among individuals in a forum or post or Instagram. So basically like harassing another individual because of language or ethnicity purposes. Okay, so and also here we have another construct that I want to talk about. That's language learner identity. In this case, it's L2 identity. So it's mostly, it refers to constructing new ways of linking the self to new worlds or words or new cultures. When this is done properly, usually people are more oriented to target culture and they adopt more oriented identities. But when sometimes they are exposed to bullying or like negative incidents, and they become more nationalistic when they are living in the target culture. So when this happens, they usually have national identities, like increased national identities. And so yeah, so regarding all these concepts, again, I want to connect it to bullying victimization. And when you look at the literature, you will see that bullying victimization towards English learners happen among English learners and also from native speakers to English learners. So why do English learners bully each other? It's basically for one purpose, gaining more power. Because English language learners cannot gain power over native speakers because of their language proficiencies in most cases. And to gain power at school, they usually bully other ELs or English learners compared to native speakers, because they can gain power over English language learners easily. And those English language learners who are bullied are usually they usually have lower English proficiency. But there was no research on this when I started doing this research study. And there are some bullying victimization studies in Norway, Germany, and some intracultural and intercultural bullying studies in the US, but none of them focused on learners, like English learners or language learners, and their identity or motivation. So I decided to do more research on this. Another concept that we need to think about, like L2 identity, is mostly like power relations, investment. So those concepts are also related to L2 identity, because like agency, for example, it's mostly on when English learners have agency, or they put forward their agencies to handle their language learning, they become more involved in the process. They invest in more, maybe they are more motivated. So their agency handles the whole situation. So we might want to check on this concept too. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'll only focus on the L2 identity and bullying victimization today. Okay, so for this study, I used Bronfenbrenner's social ecology of bullying as theoretical framework, because in this framework, the individual or the English language learner is the center of the society, and this individual is surrounded by other people, and they live in an institution and in a community, and maybe to a larger extent we're all living in a society. So bullying behavior might come from any of the layers according to this framework. So it can be interpersonal towards this individual, among maybe peer bullying, or an English language learner might be working at an institution as a staff, and his or her boss might be bullying this person because of the ethnicity, language, and things like that. So this framework was a proper one to use in this research study. So the main purpose was to analyze the effect of bullying, victimization, basically traditional bullying and cyberbullying on English learners' L2 identity, and specifically on national and oriented identities. So I wanted to see how nationalistic or how oriented they were when they were bullied. And the research question was basically, even though it's a structural equation modeling analysis, the main research question was, what's the relationship between bullying victimization and L2 identity of English language learners? Okay, methodology. So I know this was a longer survey. It's 72 5-point Likert scale items, 5 open-ended questions, and some demographics questions. This survey was adapted from several other surveys, which I will show in the next slide. But basically, it was based on a survey, and then the 5 open-ended questions provided more reflections on those items in the survey. But for today, even though this was like a mixed methods design, I'll just only focus on the quantitative part. But if you have questions, I can also show you like some of the excerpts from participants. So the demographics the demographic data were analyzed in SPSS and also partial least squares structural equation modeling. And I used Smart PLS program instead of SPSS because I wasn't sure if my data would be non-normal or not. It was the normal data when I examined it later on. But you know, I still wanted to use this because it's more accurate compared to SPSS, so I used Smart PLS. And the qualitative part was examined through NVLO. Okay, so yeah, the survey that had 72 items were constructed through these 3 studies. And I will basically talk about traditional bullying and cyberbullying constructs in this presentation, and the very last constructs, national identity and oriented identity today. Okay, the criterion was being older than 18, because I work with adults. And those ethnic minority people would be international students, faculty, staff, or English language learners in the US, or immigrants living in the US. They were not supposed to be, you know, getting education in a US institution, but they were supposed to be basically using English as a second language. Okay, sample size. When I distributed the survey, I collected 1,464 surveys, but I was able to use only 1,022 of them because some of them were not completed much, and they involved a lot of missing data. And basically, based on Daniel Soper website sampling strategies, 1,022 surveys would be enough to find the data, the results. And some of the you know, adults were from state university, a college, or a community center. And also I collected around like 500 or 560 surveys from Amazon Mechanical Turk website. It's a great, good quality survey collection tool And the reliability and validity of that the data collected through Amazon Mechanical Turk website was also the reliability and validity were proven with some scientific studies. So if you want to use it or check it out, you can. It's a pretty like practical website. You just set up the criteria. Let's say I want participants to be English language learners or from this country or that country or above 18 years of age. So you can basically set the criteria and collect the data. Your survey would only go to those participants who registered with this website. So anyways, the results of this study are based on those 1,022 people's data. And the demographics indicated that around 44% of those individuals were university age level, so 18 to 24, and about 37% was above 25 up to 34, 35. And their educational levels were mostly on like high school degrees, bachelor's degrees, and master's degrees. Their ethnicity was white, Hispanic, or Asian. And most of the participants immigrated or came to the US from China, Brazil, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia. And the normality of the data was fine. When we look at the skewness and kurtosis values, it was within the range of 1 plus and minus. And this, I know this looks complicated, but not really complicated when you think about structural equation modeling. So when I first created this model, I considering the whole, like all of the items in the survey, I had 15 different variables, and this was the first estimation results from partially square structural equation modeling. And this is the algorithm output. And of course, first I assessed the measurement model like this. And by looking at the, removing the whole cyberbullying, traditional bullying, national identity, and oriented identity constructs from the whole model, I also assessed the reflector model of those constructs. And you can see the indicators. So those indicators are the items matching with each construct. And outer loadings were supposed to be larger than 0.70, and the lower ones were removed to make the model better. And also the composite reliability was supposed to be between 0.60 and 0.90. And if it wasn't, again, some of the items causing confusion was removed, and the model got better, as you can see from composite reliability and AVE values. AVE values are basically the average variance extracted values, like Cronbach alpha values. Okay, looking at the discriminant validity, you see the cross loadings are fine, but there's also like other measures that you can check to see if each construct is discriminated from each other well or badly, basically. And the cross loadings are fine, but Fornell-Larker did not discriminate traditional bullying from cyberbullying, because I guess the system thought that they're all bullying anyways. Okay, what is it? Oh, sorry. Something is going on. Okay. So, sorry about that. Okay, Fornell-Larker values could not discriminate between traditional bullying and cyberbullying. They were basically bullying, but again, in this case, the researchers should make some evaluations. And that's what I did. And based on the literature, traditional bullying and cyberbullying are different things. One of them is face-to-face, and the other one is done online. So I could proceed to the next stage. after removing all the problematic items. So this was the final path model after removing the low outer loaded indicators. And the structure or the model that I'm going to be talking about is this one. Basically, it's cyberbullying, traditional bullying, national identity, and oriented identity. And this was the whole model. Okay. So looking at the relationship between all these different variables, we see that both traditional bullying victimization and cyberbullying victimization contributed to English language learner identity development, either positively or negatively overall. So you can see that the path coefficiency in the first column after the path column. And there is no direct relationship between traditional bullying and national identity. But with the others, there are direct relationships. So all of these were significant at 0.001 level and 0.01. So according to the results, by looking at all these statistics, we can say that ELLs feel more nationalistic when they are cyberbullied. So looking at the second path, there's a positive correlation and it's a medium effect. This may be because cyberbullying was a constant factor affecting ELLs' lives every day. And also another indication might be bully victims in cyberbullying cases couldn't escape from the bully even if they changed school, work, or environment, because bullies are online and they can reach the victim anytime on social media or through emails or any kind of like forums. And also traditional bullying victimization and oriented identity was positive, and that's a high correlation. So this means that English language learners became more oriented into the target culture and language as they were bullied physically or face-to-face. I know it's an interesting finding, because like, why would you be more oriented when you are bullied face-to-face? But this is actually an interest, it's interesting. And this may be because English language learners may have fought against bullies in a non-online environment and gained self-confidence as they did, because it's specific to the participants in this study. And ELLs may act as agents and take actions while learning an L2. So maybe their agency was acting out and making them more, making them stronger. They draw upon others' words, such as family members, friends, teachers, and peers, and then they appropriate what others say or do to them. They use language as a tool to orient their identities. And considering all of this situation, maybe like English language learners possibly mediated the traditional bullying coming from others or peers or bosses, and their oriented identity to adjust in the target society. So the positive relationship between cyberbullying and national and oriented identity could be explained by this. But of course, I would need interviews or maybe qualitative data to be able to say something definite. So far, the correlations showed such a relationship. And the negative relationship between cyberbullying and oriented identity, the last row, also support the findings that I mentioned earlier. When cyberbullying occurs towards English language learners, they possibly do not want to be more involved in the L2 community. So, okay, here's the thing. Traditional bullying causes more orientedness, because their agency is acting out and trying to be strong or trying to seem strong towards the bully. But when they are cyberbullied, they are becoming more more negatively oriented. So basically, like less oriented to L2 culture. They become more nationalistic. This also explains the positive relationship between national identity and cyberbullying. But to stay connected and oriented within the society as active agents for their L2 learning or for English learning, they may have preferred to resist and not use English as an L2. So this might be another reason why the result was negative. So overall, when we look at those findings, or this is a more like a detailed way of the assessment of structural model, it can be concluded that English language learners who were traditionally bullied might have considered their L2 identity as more oriented by adopting some agency roles because of having to live with the bullies around them. Because sometimes, like when you live with a bully, it's possible to escape, but you kind of like have to create an environment in which you can share that environment with the bully or seem strong against that bully. So this might be the reason. But in cyberbullying case, they probably became more nationalistic because the size of the potential audience in cyberbullying is much larger, because cyberbullying has access to, or cyberbully, the bullying person, has access to the victim, English language learner victim, 24-hour, 7 days a week, because it's online. It can be done anytime. It can be done while the English language learner is sleeping or at school. It's online. It's right there, and the bully can reach the English language learner anytime. So cyberbullying is more widespread, and people prone to do cyberbullying victimization more, because like sometimes individuals are scared to bully another person physically because they have the risk of getting into jail or things like that. But when you do cyberbullying, you just make comments, and when you're in trouble, you just delete it or something, I guess. That's why like cyberbullying is more flexible, and it's more open to discussion. And so cyberbullying victims cannot avoid the bully, basically, not even by changing school or moving to another city or town. The victim's fear of bully can trigger the genuine panic. And these the results can be also like supported by some other cyberbullying studies that were done on Facebook or some other social media, but not those research studies are not specifically English language learners. So yeah, we definitely need more studies on this. So just to sum up, cyberbullying is not the same thing as traditional bullying. Just like I said, cyberbullying is more common, and traditional bullying might be less common depending on the school environment or the people's relationship. And the two other important outcomes of this study is basically there was some lack of belongingness to L2 culture when people are traditionally bullied, but that's actually the opposite. There is lack of belongingness to L2 culture when there is cyberbullying, because people are more affected by cyberbullying compared to traditional bullying. And then the other thing is adapting to L2 culture was easier when they are traditionally bullied, because I guess they were able to act out, and their English language learners' identity and agency acted out and protected their identity, or they are protected by their agencies. So we should actually look at the role of agency in adapting to L2 culture, or having an active agency against English language learner bullying victimization. So this is another gap. If there is any participants in this study attending, who are planning to do doctoral research or master's thesis on any topic, or if you're looking for any topics for your thesis. So another thing is like avoidance of using English versus with English as a tool to orient ELL identities. So actually, just like Vygotsky stated, language is a tool. So you can prefer to not to use English, to kind of not to deal with the bully, but then again, that's not a solution. Or you can use English, your second language, as a tool to orient or to respond to the bully. So I was just looking at some of the qualitative data that I obtained through that, like open-ended questions, and I actually interviewed one of the participants so far. Some participants used their native languages as a weapon against the bully. Like if bully has been victimizing the English language learner by saying some like bad things in English, like just like in the video, those three guys were kind of bullying the little boy. They used English, but if the little boy responded in his native language, the bullies would not understand what he was saying, and in that way, maybe they would be puzzled, they would be scared too. But again, that's these have to be researched and scientifically proven that like those strategies are working. So that's why as a future study, like I suggest creating anti-bullying clubs and doing more interviews with the English learners who were bullied or who are being bullied. So that's a future direction. And my next study will probably focus more on this aspect. But then again, just like every kind of research study, this study also had some limitations, like instrument validity, since I adopted those instruments. It has the instrument that I created have to be validated in several other studies and contexts, and it should be tested, or the model should be tested. And another limitation would be self-reported surveys, because in self-report surveys, usually adults are hesitant in giving honest responses, especially in bullying cases. Like some of those participants were working at some institutions. They were afraid that their boss might be might see the answers to the survey, and they were self-cautious. Also, another thing is like some of the questions were asking them about their recall, like bullying memories. Again, when there's something like that, like there's an instrument asking about like remembering stuff from the past, there's always recall bias. And again, bullying victimization is a sensitive issue, and it should be handled carefully. So even though I did not ask specifically, oh, like, have you ever been bullied? Like, I did not use the wording bullying because that might make them more sensitive. So I basically used in the items that, like, have you ever been harassed by another individual in doing this? Did somebody tell you something bad about your ethnicity or your language proficiency? Such statements, but I did not use the wording bullying. Okay, so again, as for the future research, like educational equity is more important, especially like nowadays, considering the whole political situation around the world, not only in the US, and also the whole, health situation. Like nowadays, this coronavirus is like something that people are scared of. And, especially with those, like, I hear a lot about like bullying towards Chinese individuals, and it's, it's not nice. But the importance of bullying victimization as a construct or as a topic is increasing. So future research should be done, especially, about the bullying victimization of English language learners or international or immigrant individuals. And classrooms have to be diverse, and we should teach kids and everyone working at an institution basically how to be diverse and how to accept differences, and not kind of creating norms, but seeing differences as something normal. And again, courses have to be designed, or curriculum has to be rearranged maybe by integrating this diversity. And teachers should be using some strategies in handling bullying situation, because it might happen in a class anytime. So maybe like creating anti-bullying clubs at schools would be a possibility. And again, like I'm also curious about the qualitative results that I will be examining from these individuals, because I did some interviews just so far, basically one, and I'm in the middle of like doing another interview with some other participant. So these would shed light more in this topic. And okay, so yeah, basically so far this is all, and those are the references. And if you want more, I can provide more references to you if you're interested in this topic. And my article on this topic actually was published on the 1st of this month. And if you want to check it out and download it, it's free to download. You can check out the full results and everything. It's based on the quantitative data completely. It's not talking about qualitative data, but you can download it on this link, and I can also provide the link to the webinar organizers, and they can post it on the interest section. So yeah, I guess I'll get the questions now.
Yeah, good day, everyone. My name is Ende Diallo. I'm the chair for English as a foreign language. Sorry, I was supposed to Hilal, but I was in class. So far for the questions, I think we have one question asking what does oriented identity stand for? So the question is
did you I couldn't get your voice actually. Can you say that again?
Okay, can you hear me?
Now? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, the question is asking what does oriented identity stand for?
So oriented identity, let me go back to that slide. It will be easier for you all to see it at the same time. Just a second. Okay. So oriented identity is basically the identity type that people are more accustomed to the culture. They adapt well to the culture. So when they adapt, so just think about identity as a neutral construct. And if I am more nationalistic, I always talk about my nation and how proud I am about it. That's more nationalistic. But if I am more adapted to the target culture, for example, US culture, and I'm trying to belong to the culture or being one of them, then I have more oriented identity. Did I answer the question?
Yes, I think you have.
Yes, I think you have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does anyone have a question?
Okay. So I see one question. Have you ever been bullied? So here's the thing. I think I was bullied because I lived in the US for about like 7.5 years. Yes, I was bullied. It's hard to kind of talk about those bullying experiences. Just like I said, like recall bias, and that's a sensitive issue. But part of the reason why I wanted to do this research is basically I experienced some of those emotional feelings, and that's why I value this research more. So yeah, I guess like I have a personal connection to my research, and I was bullied. Yes. You're welcome. Let's see any other questions. Yep, I agree. Bullying isn't nice, but sometimes actually, like when maybe future research might also focus on personality of individuals learning other languages, because personality might be affecting such situations too, because when people have stronger personality, they are more adapting to the culture, and they can fight with the bullying victimization feeling easier than their peers who have weaker personality. So maybe another future direction could be personality.
We have another question. Mm-hmm. Can we detect cyberbullying in a non-online environment? As most of us in a classroom or not online.
So so cyberbullying happens in online environment. So I guess like the question was like, as a teacher, how I can identify my student is being cyberbullied, I guess. Is that what the person was trying to say? Because as a teacher, you can you need to know your students very well. You need to talk to them sometimes, just like a friend. So you would understand if a learner is being bullied. Maybe like if it's okay to use cell phones in the class, you would see that that individual or that student is dealing, with the phone a lot, or just like looking at the phone a lot. So that might be a way of identifying who is being cyberbullied in class, because people, students can use like online dictionaries in class, so they are allowed to use phones in class. But if you know your students well, if you're just like friends with them, it's easier to identify such cases. Okay, another question.
Here another question. Yes. Also, if we have a student who's a non-local and a minority in the class, should we pay him or her more attention than the homegrown student?
I would say yes, because maybe they are dealing with more problems. It might not be completely bullying, but maybe they have some problems in their at their home. Like if the student is feeling sad or looking sad, it might be also related to some issues with the immigration, some issues with the family, maybe adapting to the culture for some other reasons, not completely on language or ethnicity. But basically, like as a teacher, I think like what you can do is like observe your students well and try to talk to them, and just be a guidance teacher for them, because they should be able to talk to you when they have a problem. Okay, another question. How do you advise us to combat those who are overly nationalistic, who may not necessarily take part in bullying, but their overindulgent nationalistic attitude causes other students to feel inferior? Let's see. Okay, so I guess like you're asking about the interracial, well, intraracial bullying or interracial bullying. Because just like I said, bullying occurs among, so here, not there. Oops. Okay, so bullying, some bullying information. Bullying occurs from, like, it happens from an English learner to another English learner. But if some schools have anti-bullying clubs, in those clubs, like, people are welcome, and they sometimes do some like scenarios, or they create scenarios, they play drama, and they show that what's bullying to all the kids at school. So maybe like creating such anti-bullying clubs. I know some of the US schools have such clubs, especially at the middle school and primary school stage. They have those clubs, and they are really helpful to those individuals. But then again, it's based on power relations among individuals. And if one learner is tend to bully the other one, and both of them are English language learners, again, the teacher should interfere and talk to the bullying person. But again, not asking the bully to say, like, kind of push the bully to apologize from the other English learner in front of the whole class. So it should be like in a more like a separate room, kind of giving them more information, asking them to, you know, accept each other's differences, things like that. But then again, those strategies are just based on some of the literature that I collect, and these strategies should be proven with the experimental studies. And I could not find any experimental studies examining if these strategies would work or not. So we're missing a lot of information here about bullying victimization, especially intercultural bullying. It's huge, and we need more researchers.
Thank you, Hilal. I have a question.
Yeah.
How do we distinguish bullying from harassment?
Actually, so that's why I included the description of bullying. So let's imagine two cases. In one case, one of the individuals is angry at another person just because of something that's not nice. That's, you know, that individual is harassing the other individual just in that case only, not constantly. But to be able to identify something as bullying, it has to be specifically intentional to that individual that's being bullied. It has to be repeated in many times. Let's say this learner is being bullied by the same individuals constantly, like for about like 1.5 months. And that's always done to that student. Just like imagine that scene that I showed. If the same type of behavior happens against that kid for a long time, that's actually bullying. It has to be repeated, intentional, and there should be an imbalance of power. So those three components make bullying separate from all other things like harassing someone just because of some reason. So basically, those three components, we should pay attention to those three components.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, at this moment we do not have any more questions, but we still have 10 minutes in the presentation. Do you have anything you would like to say as a conclusion before we close out the session?
I actually would like to thank everyone attending this presentation. It's a really important issue, and it's actually, just like I said before, it's a part of me. Like, I'm connected to this research, and I will continue to work on bullying, victimization, identity, and motivation studies. And so I appreciate all the attendance here. And if you want more information, I can, answer your emails. And here is my email, hilalpeker@utexas.edu. That's the email that I use mostly. And I will also, you can also check my article that I showed to you. Just let me know if you have any questions later on. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we must conclude today's online program. Today's presentation was titled "As Traditional Bullying of Cyberbullying, Bigger Impact on Ethnic Identities." Special thank you to our presenters. This concludes the program.